Final Fantasy VII Remake. Should you get into it? Is it just another boring role-playing game? And do you have to know anything about the Final Fantasy franchise to play the game without being completely lost? Howdy everybody, welcome to the video. My name is Ventus SGN, and in this video I hope to, in about 13 or 14 minutes or less, answer these questions for you so you can make the best decision when it comes to you getting or not getting Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just as an aside note, there isn't a company paying me to make this video or deride the game, so it's not going to be a giant advertisement on why you should get Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is just the truth. My truth. Alright, so the biggest question that newcomers to Final Fantasy, and particularly Final Fantasy VII, will have is this. I don't know anything about Final Fantasy, and I've never played one of the games before, so why should I get hyped or want to get a remake of the 7th game in the series? Well, I'll be honest with you. Way back in 1997, when the original Final Fantasy VII dropped, I had the same concerns. And more than that, I knew the reputation of Final Fantasy games. They were like these role-playing games with swords and magic and monsters and... Ugh. I was a fighting game guy. Give me Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or Bloody Roar, and I was good. I had a best friend named Fred, who was like me in a lot of ways, and we loved fighting each other in fighting games. So when I went to his house one afternoon, I was super shocked to see him playing Final Fantasy VII. Now, sure, I had saw the commercials about the game, seen the cutscenes, which at the time were impressive, but the game was still a RPG, a role-playing game. And at the time, me and RPGs just didn't get along. They were too long, they were too boring, and there just wasn't enough action. But as I sat down to watch my friend, someone I trusted, play this game and really get into it, I decided that maybe the game deserved a closer look. Now, I can't tell you if he offered for me to play the game or not that first day, but I do remember watching him and listening to him tell me about the story so far. He quickly explained to me that this story, Final Fantasy VII, had absolutely nothing to do with the previous Final Fantasy or the one before that. He told me that the only constant between the games were certain characters or enemies that may appear in each version of the game, but they were different in each game. Like, there's this one character called Cid. In each Final Fantasy game, there has been one version or another of a character named Cid, but that's it. The characters share a name only. In some games, Cid is a character that you can control, in other games, Cid's just a side character. So, in short, one of my biggest problems with getting into Final Fantasy VII as a kid was like taken care of. Each game was its own story, its own universe. Now, fast forward to 2020, we have a lot more Final Fantasy titles, and I guess somewhere along the way, people really began to take interest in certain Final Fantasy versions and wanted to see more in those stories. So those games got sequel games, such as Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XIII-2. Now, it's worth noting that Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XII have nothing to do with each other, while Final Fantasy XIII and XIII-2 are directly related. One tells the continuing story of the other. So, no, you don't have to know anything about Final Fantasy to play Final Fantasy VII. But then you may ask, do I have to have played the original game to play this? Now that's an interesting question, and one that I'm going to say no. But I will say that for those of us who did play the original Final Fantasy VII back in 97 or 98 or even 99, this game will mean a lot more to us than it will to you, and that's not a bad thing, and it shouldn't take away from your opinion of the game. But what should? What should you base your opinion off of? Word of mouth? By now, I'm sure those of you who are curious have seen the gameplay. I mean, while you're watching this video, you're seeing what the game looks like and how it feels. So, does it look cool to you? Does it look even slightly interesting? With this game, there comes a lot of deal breakers, things that even original players will weigh and decide whether or not they will try to like the game or just criticize it. For me, There was one point of the game that really sold me, and that was the game's magic system. And I'll tell you this. After I beat Final Fantasy VII for the first time, I played each of the Final Fantasies that were released after that game, and the only game that I liked enough to play through and beat was Final Fantasy XIII. After playing FF7 and getting used to its mechanics, I was disappointed in Final Fantasy VIII, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that can all be boiled down to one root problem: the magic system. FF7 for me has literally the best magic system out of any fantasy RPG I've ever played. And I'm not even like exaggerating. I'm telling you the truth. Like, I've not played another fantasy role-playing game that's had a better magic system. The game uses something called materia, which basically allows any character on your team to use any type of magic. Doesn't matter what their class is, doesn't matter their magic using potential. If you wanted all of your characters to be able to call down ridiculous amounts of lightning on your enemies, they could. Now, granted, some characters would be better at doing it, but you could do it. And that was something I like to call freedom. Freedom to choose what my characters did in a linear storyline, an adventure that is set on train tracks that will lead you to events no matter what you did. But the ability to choose how you do those events made it that much more fun. I soon found out that more than just my friend Freddy had Final Fantasy VII, and other friends had it too, and they would talk about strategies that they used to fight one boss or another, or brag about how much grinding they did to get certain skills unlocked before certain events took place. I had a friend named Sean, who was always fond of lording it over everyone that he had Barrett's satellite beam before leaving Midgar, something that you would normally unlock like way later in the game. And that intrigued me, like all of it. So I had to get in on the story to be able to talk about the events and encounters and just the story. Now, here's the thing. I don't know, and I can't say if it was because I'd never played an RPG before Final Fantasy VII, or if it was because FF7's story was literally called the best or one of the best RPG stories ever told. But when I tell you that I was completely blown away by the drama of Final Fantasy VII, I am not just exaggerating. Now, I don't want to give anything away or spoil anything to anyone who's never played it before, so I will say this. As a kid, I loved cartoons, and especially the ones that told a story, something that built up over time leading up to a finale. So it's no surprise that when I discovered anime, I quickly chose anime over American cartoons because of story. I read books as a kid. I even became somewhat of a writer in my adulthood to tell my own stories. So playing FF7 after never having played an RPG before that and only fighting games, I had no idea that a video game, could tell such a wonderfully imagined story with a compelling plot twist, and main characters that have issues, like deep-seated issues. There was one thing that really gripped me about Cloud, the main character of Final Fantasy, and something that I don't mind giving away is that he is super duper fucked up. Like, he literally lies. He lies to you, he lies to his allies, he lies to everyone. And the fact that the main character was not some actual squeaky clean hero, but a jerk, it made him so much more real to me. There were other things that took place in the story that made me like Cloud even more, but after the story was over, Cloud, became my favorite video game character ever created. And still, to this day, he is my favorite character, with Sephiroth, his nemesis, a very, very, very close second. I don't know, I think I like Sephiroth a little bit more, to be completely honest with you. Now, the story between those two, and the fact that Sephiroth's story is even more twisted and convoluted than Cloud's in the story, just a combination of epically screwed up events that make you love Sephiroth and hate him at the same time, but understand his mentality and reasoning. I just can't tell you which of the aspects of the game makes me like the game more. The mechanics, or the story, or the characters, or just all of them together just make this really wonderful thing come to life. I know I sort of went off on a tangent there, and I'm sorry, but when I get to thinking about Final Fantasy VII, it brings that out of me. Half of that is kind of like reliving my childhood, which any adult who played the game way back in '97 can identify with. There have been 2 games since the birth of PlayStation 3 that I've been waiting for. One of these games I knew was coming, and then the other one I hoped was coming. The first one was Kingdom Hearts 3. And when the game came out, it let me down. Like, I didn't enjoy it as much as I'd like to have. In 2015, with new technology for video games and things looking so completely amazing, I hoped they would remake Final Fantasy VII. I had no idea if they actually would. I just hoped. Like, I would tell my friends, man, I know they're going to make a Final Fantasy VII remake, man. They have to. I hope they remake this game. And then something amazing happened. A rumor. I read somewhere that some Square Enix person said they would remake Final Fantasy VII, but only if they made another game that came close to the power of Final Fantasy VII. And then a couple years later, Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced, and, like, full disclosure, I cried. Tears of joy. Like, I don't think I've ever cried tears of joy for anything, except maybe when I got my dog for the first time or something like that. I cried tears of joy for this game being announced, and I'm like a grown-ass man. Like, I cried because I was so happy that they were giving us the chance to play Final Fantasy VII, but now, right? But here's the thing. Those tears of joy were short-lived as the dark side of this sort of dawned on me. In this new future of games, I don't want to play a turn-style RPG. I want action. So when Final Fantasy 15 was given to us, the spark was reignited. Final Fantasy 15 was a game created specifically, listen to me, Final Fantasy 15 is a game that was created specifically for first-timers to the Final Fantasy series. Alright? It may be the 15th game in the Final Fantasy franchise, but it will literally tell you when you start the game, this game was specifically created for first-timers to the series. And here's the thing. It wasn't turnstile. It was action. It was Devil May Cry with rules. But still swinging hack and slash. Now, I really didn't like Final Fantasy 15 on like a whole lot of levels. There were a bunch of things that I just thought were dumb, like whenever you threw magic and your allies were around, your allies got affected by it. I didn't think that was like a smart idea. I mean, I understood the reasoning and mechanics behind it, but I just didn't think that was a good idea for a video game. They tried to make it a little bit too real to life or whatever like that. So there's just a bunch of things about Final Fantasy 15 that I did not like. There are a lot of things that I did like, but the one thing that I liked about Final Fantasy 15 and that gave me hope for Final Fantasy VII Remake is that Square Enix, the people who make Final Fantasy, they knew. And they wanted us to know that they knew and that it was coming. Cloud, the way we wanted him in the future. Dante Sparta with rules. Rules that enhance the gameplay instead of hindering it, making it so much more than a hack and slash. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Would the magic be the same in the game? They gave us clues with a game called Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It was a prequel game to Final Fantasy VII. And before you ask, no, you don't need to know anything about Crisis Core to be able to play Final Fantasy VII. It'd be cool if you did play it, but you don't have to know anything. Basically, Crisis Core just told a story set in the world of Final Fantasy VII, which was basically a sort of history lesson of events that happened, if anything. But in the game, the magic system was similar to the original. Now, I come to find out that the magic system in Final Fantasy VII Remake will be the exact same. Like, it's going to be the same. I can't tell you how excited that makes me for the game. They're going to have Cloud the way that I want him, updated, swinging his sword like Dante Sparta with the same magic system. It's like going to be the story that I know and love, and I know they've changed a little bit. They've given us a few new surprises, and here's the thing that I really enjoy. They've given us inputs from different entertainment sources that are going to influence the gameplay and cinematic features. There was a movie called Advent Children, which tells the story of Final Fantasy VII after the original game is over. Listen, please do yourself a favor. Watch this movie. Like, after you're done with this video, go and find the movie on Google. I'm pretty sure you can find it somewhere free. Watch the movie. And I'll leave you with this. There's a reason why they chose to remake Final Fantasy VII and not Final Fantasy VIII or 9 or 10. Play the demo and become Cloud for an hour. Watch Advent Children and meet Sephiroth and witness witness the best CGI fight scenes I've ever seen in my life. And then, only then, make your decision about whether or not you want to play Final Fantasy VII Remake.